Hello and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who wakes up when he hears the Champions League music. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Yeah, it's me and Riyad Mahrez, the two of us. That's what it takes. It's my alarm music every day, and that's what it takes for him to, I guess, score goals.
Is that right? Your alarm is the champions?
Yep.
Wake up, Taylor.
It's a good way to wake yourself up, yeah.
So if anyone has no idea what we're talking about, this is Riyad Mahrez scored 2 for Leicester as they beat Club Brugge 3-0 on their Champions League debut. Great performance from Mahrez, and Ranieri said maybe he wakes up when he hears the Champions League music.
Yeah, that must have been it. I mean, not a good win for Leicester.
Oh, yeah.
It is a Club Brugge team that I think is struggling in the Belgian league, so maybe not that strong, but still away from home, the first Champions League game you've ever played. I think they'll take it, I'm guessing.
All right. Another guy who impressed in the Champions League is the young American, the 17-year-old for 4 more days, Christian Pulisic.
Greatest player in the world.
He played the full game for Borussia Dortmund as they beat Legia Warsaw 6-0. Pulisic got himself an assist. We watched the game this morning with a strong eye on Pulisic, and I think we're hype train full steam ahead, but we also have a better idea of what the hype train is made up of, what the various parts do, and maybe which parts need a little bit of tinkering with.
Yeah.
Is that a fair way to put it?
Sure.
You like my metaphor?
I do, although it kind of conjures up images of Snowpiercer, which is not great. Not great. Great movie, but, that's not a parallel you want. So let's just move quickly on, shall we?
Hype train.
Okay.
All right. Let's talk about all the great things we saw from Christian Pulisic in this 6-0 win for Borussia Dortmund. I mean, pick a thing you were impressed with.
All the things I'm going to say. I mean, I think the biggest thing is you continue to see his technical ability on the ball under pressure, especially a couple different times was that quick little turn. I think I said it was akin to like closing a door, where it's just like it's like a quick cut and then he's away.
Yeah, so there were several times we saw a thing where he would receive the ball with Legia Warsaw players around him, and he wouldn't necessarily do a fancy trick or turn or a step over, but he would just receive the ball and turn and then be 3 yards away from the guys who were theoretically trying to mark him. And we put it down to it's one thing to be quick, right? Not anyone can be quick, but players can be quick when they're at full speed. I think one of the things we've got to start thinking about with Christian Pulisic is acceleration, like the ability to go from zero, like a standing start, to real fast in a split second, and that surprises players. That's how he ends up turning away from them.
Right, and I guess maybe it's part and parcel of that rapid acceleration is the efficiency of that movement as well, because it's just like one quick touch. It doesn't require a couple stutter steps or kind of shifting his body weight. It's just one cut, and then he's away at pace.
Yeah, it's that Croatian Pennsylvania mechanics.
Yes, of course.
But it is, you called it what? Closing the door? The move that he does with his foot as he receives it, where you sort of basically just rotate your foot one way to take the ball that way and then you're away. I think of it as a pinball flipper.
I think yours is better.
You do?
I like the pinball flipper.
So for kids who've never seen a pinball machine...
that's a depressing thought and a depressing reality.
That's probably true, right? As the ball comes down, there are flippers at the bottom, and they just rotate sort of 45 degrees or so to flip the ball back up. And
Can we make this a new segment on the show? Daryl explains classic
games?
entertainment pieces. Yeah,
Daryl explains beachfront entertainments.
Yeah. Now go with Duck Hunt. Explain Duck Hunt to the people at home.
There are ducks and you shoot them. It's pretty straightforward.
Pretty much. There you go. Well done.
But you know what I'm saying? Just that it's that quick rotation of the foot, and then he's away. It's a really sort of simple but effective move, which is what we're seeing a lot of with Christian Pulisic.
Yeah, I mean, and it's that. It's also like you asked me. So he starts opposite Ousmane Dembele, who we know is a fairly talented player.
Yeah, Pulisic on the right, Ousmane Dembele on the left.
Right, and Dembele's 19, and so we're discussing. Is he really that much farther ahead than Christian Pulisic? Is he 2 years ahead of Christian?
Is he
Pulisic,
2 years better?
Right.
And because really the big question a lot of people have is it's not really about should Pulisic start for the US men's national team. It's really about how does he start? How does he get into a position where he starts regularly for Borussia Dortmund when he's up against like 6 other really talented attacking midfielders and wingers?
Right. And my first answer was to say that Pulisic is not as physically imposing as Dembele, but we saw him ride a lot of tackles. We saw him. There's the one sequence when he maybe plays the ball a little bit too long, runs on, gets into a physical tussle with the player, knocks the player over, no foul given, then he's away, and then he's in own goal. And that's very impressive. So he does have that physicality. I think where his game is a little bit lacking is what he does with that final ball when he's in those pressure situations.
Yes. To backtrack a little, I would say Pulisic's physicality is very impressive for a 17-year-old.
Yeah, okay, that's a better way to put it.
Right? But if you think of what happens to every young man's sort of physique between like those teenage years and when you hit like 19, 20, you really do thicken out a bit.
Yeah.
Right? Pulisic's still got some thickening out to do.
I will say this, like I think if he were from another country, and that's where I'll leave it, there might be some questions about his age. Because he does, if you look at the interviews, though, he also does have like a decent amount of facial hair that he clearly has to shave. And his voice has dropped a little bit. He doesn't have that 17-year-old kind of squeak that you might expect. He's got a deeper voice than you might have anticipated. So he does look
so
older.
If he'd won like a U17 championship with Nigeria?
Maybe there's some questions asked. Maybe we're MRIing some wrists to see what's going on.
But there's more to come in terms of physicality, right? And soon he'll be sort of maybe at the standard of strength that those other Borussia Dortmund wingers possess, the ones who are a couple of years older than him. You were talking about his final ball.
Yep.
I mean, most people will have seen the highlight, which is a Christian Pulisic assist, where he collects the ball on the left, drives down that sort of near side left wing, sort of inside the box. It's Ramos or Castro. I believe it's Castro. Puts his arm up at the far post, and Pulisic zips that ball across, like through the corridor of uncertainty, across the back of defenders, in front of goalkeepers, lands it on Castro's foot for the finish.
Right. And it's a great ball. And I think it's a little more to it than what you said, just because the way he hits it, he does that hit on like the bottom right and then move your foot around to the top left as quickly as you can. So you put that spin on the ball.
Yeah, there's a bit of bend on it.
And he bends it around so it gets around the defender, but then it cuts away so the goalkeeper can't get to it. And that's why it's a great ball to be finished easily. But he did that about 8 other times in this game.
That's the thing, right? If you watch this entire game, he tried that low ball across the face of goal. I'm not sure how many times, but I'm going to say at least 6 or 7 as we watched it. And this was the only time it was successful.
Right.
Many times it's blocked by a defender or no one's on the end of it. There was one time when he definitely should have cut it back
to Dembele.
To Dembele. And you see Mario Götze and Aubameyang and Dembele not thrilled that Pulisic instead tried to play the ball across the face of goal.
Dembele does the like frustrated striker, 2 feet on the floor, and then kind of like points his hands out.
Yeah.
Like a why not me? And then Götze and Aubameyang both point at him like, yeah, that's where that ball should have gone.
Yes.
And Pulisic, I think takes it in stride because he's a cool customer. But there was that play. There was another one when he could have picked out Dembele at the back post. He had the time to pick his head up and see that cross. And it led to a point that you made, which is I don't think we've seen him cross the ball very often. Right. Or at least like not those kind of aerial, the Beckham bendy balls, if you will. Yep. It's a lot of low-driven crosses.
Christian Pulisic plays out wide. I know in the future he's probably going to be a number 10 right, a central playmaker, so it makes more sense. But right now Christian Pulisic plays out wide and does not seem to like to cross the ball. He likes to play it low. Even think of his, was it against Trinidad? He got the great assist in the end to Josie at the far post. He tried that ball. I think Matt Doyle had the passing graph where he tried that ball like 6 or 7 times before, same sort of ratio as in this Dortmund game, and the pass was unsuccessful. It was blocked every time until it was successful.
And you could certainly make the argument that maybe with the U.S. you understand why he's doing that. But with Dortmund, maybe with the U.S. he should be crossing in. But with Dortmund, they're a really technical team. They play the ball on the floor. They move it around quick. You don't really want to do those long lofted balls out of the box, especially because you have Aubameyang by himself.
Yeah.
That would hold a little more weight if their first 2 goals hadn't come from crosses in, headed home. So they're clearly and Mario Götze got a header in there. Yeah. The baby-faced sort of assassin gets in there, gets his goal. So clearly there is some like room for aerial balls for those big crosses, and it's another thing that we don't see very often from him.
So because obviously we are full Pulisic hype train. We're very excited about him, but I think it's worth sending these notes. Not of caution, because this doesn't mean he's not going to be the great player we think he is. It's worth reminding everybody he's only 17, turns 18, I think, in a few days. But the reason he does not start regularly for Borussia Dortmund, despite all the impressive things that he does, it is the decision-making with the final ball and just those things that make you sort of a world-class player versus a promising player who shows flashes of brilliance. It's about making the right decision every time.
And we saw Dembele make some bad decisions as well. I mean, that's going to happen in a game. But
he's only 19.
Yeah, right. We also saw him dribble through 3 different players and kind of make those creative runs, but then also make the efficient passes and be kind of intelligent with what he was trying to do.
Yep.
He subs off Emre Mor, the Turkish international, who's also 19, comes on. Kind of does the same thing. He's a little less clinical than I think Dembele was, which maybe explains why he was on the bench. But still, I mean, his first touch touch on the ball is a 30-yard run that he then drops off to Pulisic, who then crosses in for that assist.
Yeah.
So if we're in MLS, he gets the assist, Emery Moore does, as does Christian Pulisic.
Right. So it's worth just, I think now we've seen a full 90 minutes of Pulisic against, it's kind of a perfect level of opposition, right? It's some level of competition, but in a way that you get to see him really stretch his legs and attack, and you can see what he's good at and what needs work.
Right.
Because I know we're all excited, but there's no point pretending that he's the finished product at 17 years old. If we're saying that, then we're setting our standards far too low. And I know Christian Pulisic, and I'm sure Thomas Tuchel sets the bar very high for what Christian Pulisic is capable of achieving.
Right, and I also want to add the disclaimer that, like, this is a weird roundabout disclaimer, but I used to watch Top Chef back when it was still very good, and I would read Chief Judge Tom Colicchio's blog, where he would talk about, by the end of the show, you were really nitpicking. It's like, oh, maybe that one had just a bit too much salt, and that's why. Like, you're really looking at it, and that's what we're doing.
Because you have to choose between sort of impressive people.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And that's what we were doing. We were, like, specifically watching Christian Pulisic in this game. Yep. That we were going back and just seeing, like, oh, and when you're watching one player, it's easy to be like, oh, he should have put his left foot there and not done that. And, like, you can get a little bit overly critical and a little bit overly judgmental.
Yep.
We're trying not to do that, but I think in watching it through that lens of let's see what he actually does and not like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did this. Oh my gosh, I can't believe he did that. You start to see those little things that you get why he's not a regular starter yet.
And up next, it's Dortmund versus Darmstadt this weekend. So we'll see if Pulisic makes his first Bundesliga start or first Bundesliga minutes of the season at the weekend. Borussia Dortmund's next Champions League game is against Real Madrid. I think it's September 27th, Dortmund host Real Madrid. I mean, if we saw Pulisic start that game, then I'd be really excited to see him go up against Marcelo or Carvajal or someone like that.
And it's going to be an interesting Real Madrid team because that's a team that we're losing at home to Sporting until the very end of the game. Ronaldo scores, I believe, in the 89th minute.
Yep.
And then
a free kick. I saw the free kick.
Yeah, which was very pretty. And then Alvaro Morata scores a header. And there were 4 minutes of injury time, and he scores in like 93-57. So, I mean, really leaving it late there. We're Real Madrid. And so you wonder if they're going to tinker, if they're going to change things up, or if they're going to come in ready to play against Dortmund.
But positive for Christian Pulisic, but also room for improvement. Yes. So let's see what happens.
But we have to go back to, why did I get a look of judgment when I said I watched Top Chef? What do you got against Top Chef, huh?
Oh, no, the look on my face was, I love doing the show with Taylor because we go to places that I am unfamiliar with.
All right, fair enough. So you never watched Top Chef, then? I mean, you only need to watch season 1 because Harold Dieterle is the greatest chef of all time. That's all I have to say about that.
I will not be doing that, but okay. So another American in action in the Champions League was Mr. Fabian Johnson lining up for Borussia Moenchengladbach against Manchester City. That game finished 4-0 to Manchester City. A hat-trick for Sergio Aguero, one for Iheanacho in the last couple of minutes.
Yes, I'd say one for Iheanacho, but if we're being fair, like a half for Iheanacho and a half for Leroy Sané, who, again, another 19-year-old who can do good things, dribble, pick his head up, create space, find a pass. All very impressive.
Actually, should we talk about what Leroy Sané, who I believe is a couple years ahead of Christian Pulisic
I think he's 19, right? I believe, yeah.
Okay, so what he did versus what Pulisic does when they get to the byline. I mean, Leroy Sané, instead of just firing that low pass in, he saw that it wasn't quite on, it might have been blocked, and he sort of cut and dribbled and turned. I think he evaded a slide tackle, then he nutmegged the defender to lay it on for Iheanacho. So there is this next level of creating something from a tight spot and not just thinking that firing the low cross in is going to get the job done.
Yeah, it's the eyes up, head down awareness that he has, where it's like he kind of lifts his eyes really quickly and then goes back on the ball. Yeah. And that little quarter second, half second glance allows him to kind of take in all the information, know where his teammates are, and know I need to cut it inside one more, then take one more touch, then I'll square it, and somebody will be there. And that's exactly what happened.
And if you're looking for this assist from Sané, it's like the 91st minute to Iheanacho.
Right.
I want to talk about the first goal because the big reason I was watching this game was thinking, is Fabian Johnson to blame for any of these goals?
And here's an interesting thing with that in mind, that we identified this kind of pattern with Christian Pulisic that he likes to do that low-driven cross across the box.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, I don't necessarily agree with you on this one, but I'm wondering if you have identified a Fabian Johnson defensive vulnerability.
I think I have, and I know you're not fully on board with it, but the recent Borussia Mönchengladbach game where we watched I remember Fabian Johnson essentially going to defend a cross with the wrong foot and therefore allowing the cross to come in. And I remember, correct me if I'm paraphrasing, but I remember your defence of Johnson was, he was just reacting quickly. He had to just scurry over there and get to it because someone else had let that guy double team him.
I can't remember if it was Gladbach or with the U.S. national team.
It was with Gladbach.
Okay, yes.
But essentially the same thing happens here on the first Manchester City goal.
Yeah.
Right? It's Kolarov takes a throw. There's Kevin De Bruyne, someone else in the box. The thrower isn't marked, and so I think Johnson is like scuttling back and forth between De Bruyne and back to Kolarov. And eventually he's scurrying over to Kolarov as the cross is coming in. And to me, again, it takes a weird shape where he tries to block the cross by raising the outside of his foot at a weird angle. Yeah. And the cross comes in, and Sergio Aguero scores.
Right, and if anything for me, it's less about his weird, like, non-conventional defensive approach and more about the fact that he is not a natural defender. Right. Because, as you said, he's marking Kevin De Bruyne when Kolarov gets ready to take that throw. So he moves with De Bruyne until one of the other defenders picks up the pink-faced assassin. We're sticking with the assassin theme today. And at that point, Fabian Johnson definitely has a moment of like, all right, job done. And then kind of turns around and then realizes, oh, shoot, I'm supposed to be marking somebody. I'm in defense now.
Yeah.
And so then that's where that scramble comes in. So I'm not so concerned about the scramble and the resulting weird body shape as much as I am about that 1 to 2 second switch off where you're like, oh, job done.
Well, I think one leads to the other. Right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And just watch the number of times we've seen Fabian Johnson play now. His key strength to me is his passing ability going forward and his ability to get involved in like quick 1-2 movements going forward. That's what excites me. The more I watch him play for the US and for Mönchengladbach, the more I think this guy should start as sort of an attack-minded wide midfielder.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think yesterday...
And that doesn't include wing-backs, by the way. If you make him play wing-back, he has to do defensive work. So that's why the US cannot play a 3-5-2 with Fabian Johnson.
It occurs to me, I don't know, have we ever thought about the US playing a 3-5-2?
Many people have suggested that that's a good idea. There are many reasons why it's not a good idea. When you're a wing-back, you have to do twice the work. Yeah. It doesn't mean that you sort of suddenly are magically playing both positions and there are two of you.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm very sure.
All right. Well, then, I guess it won't work. And I think it also was maybe not the best game to watch to see what Fabian Johnson is doing because it's a Man City team that are clearly pretty full of confidence right now with a full head of steam.
I mean, they were really... So, Mönchengladbach played a really interesting formation. It was definitely a back three and then some sort of five-man midfield, right? Sometimes it was like four with an extra one defence midfielder behind, and sometimes it was also three up front. And Fabian Johnson seemed to switch between... I think he played like right midfield for the first half and sort of left-sided attack for the second half.
Yep.
But Man City had so much of the ball that there was a lot of chasing.
Yeah. It seems like he was given more attacking freedom and less defensive responsibility
in the second
that
half,
game,
definitely.
And maybe that also explains why he's then less inclined to be in defensive mode come the moment when he needs to be in defensive mode.
It's just where his strength lies. His strength lies going forward. Right. That's why I'm never thrilled about Fabian Johnson playing fullback for the US.
Fair. But you know what I am thrilled about?
What's
Two
that?
Americans in the Champions League. It's been a while.
That's true. Yeah.
It's been a very long while? I'm not sure I can remember another time.
Well, there was Jermaine Jones with Schalke for a while.
Would that have coincided with like Maurice Edu or DeMarcus Beasley or somebody?
Maybe once or twice.
Yeah. Who knows?
I'm not sure.
But DeMarcus Beasley remains the American who's gone the farthest in the tournament, right?
I think it depends if you count Kirovsky or not.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, but I do know DeMarcus Beasley went to the semi-finals with PSV. That's the standard we're aiming for. Maybe Christian Pulisic this year? We shall see.
We shall see.
One more team in the Champions League.
Who would like to go to the semi-finals?
Not American, but Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah.
Back in the Champions League for the first time since, I believe, 2011. So it's interesting to see them back playing at Wembley.
Crouch and Bale, I'm pretty sure, we're in that Spurs team.
Playing at Wembley, which I looked into this. The reason they're playing at Wembley is that White Hart Lane, they're beginning to dismantle it to build the new stadium, and it doesn't quite meet UEFA standards. Plus, you can get a lot more people into Wembley than into White Hart Lane. I think there were 85,000 people there. Spurs lost 2-1 at home to Monaco. We've looked at both Monaco goals, and we're pretty sure what went wrong for Spurs. So Tottenham fans, I guess brace yourselves because we're going to explain how Tottenham kind of broke down for these goals. We're going to break down the breakdown.
And I didn't watch this game live, but I saw most of the narrative was, the joke was like, oh, it's the core of the England team playing in white at Wembley.
Yeah.
What a surprise, they let everybody down.
Yeah.
And I certainly wouldn't buy into that narrative, but I would say I can understand why people were frustrated by the seemingly apathetic performance of a couple different Spurs players and the overall lack of energy from the team.
I would call it more confused than apathetic,
yeah.
at least based on these two goals.
And
both of them come from confusion.
But that's what's... That the confusion is what's confusing, because you pointed out that Wembley's pitch looked smaller than we're used to for when there's an FA Cup final or semi-final.
They definitely narrowed the Wembley pitch, I think.
And I think you made the point that it seems like the most logical explanation for that would be because they want it to be similar to the pitch at White Hart Lane, because that's what Tottenham are used to. If you're playing a really high-tempo, high-pressing game and all of a sudden you've got 10 more yards on either side, you're in trouble, right? So you can't even...
It's easier to squeeze on a smaller field.
So you can't even make that excuse of like, oh, it was a bigger field, and so they struggled, to break down the team as a result. It just seemed like it was kind of uncertainty with what to do and uncertainty with how to move forward. So, for example, that first goal, which is a really, really well-taken goal from Bernardo Silva, it comes from Tottenham winning the ball back, Eric Dyer settling it, taking a touch, and then Eric Lamela comes running across and takes the ball.
He literally takes the ball off of Eric Dyer's foot, which is... I don't see that's ever a good thing to do to your teammates. I understand you're Lamela, you're confident, you want the ball, but to take it off his toe, it's kind of an insult.
And I watched Dyer for the entire sequence after that when then Monaco goes straight back down and score. He never reacts. He never gets frustrated. And it makes me think that maybe he's just used to the idea of, like, I'm the defensive midfielder, I'm the holding midfielder. Yeah, it's what you do. You're the creative guy. You take the ball off me and go do stuff.
But you know what he also does? He takes care of the ball. And that's not what Lamela does. Because Lamela takes the ball off Dyer's foot and immediately tries to, force a forward ball, hits the defensive midfielder for Monaco. I'm not sure who it is. I'm sorry. And then it goes to Bernardo Silva, right? It's Lamela's poor decision with the ball. Not just the poor decision to take it off of Dyer, but his poor decision with the ball that essentially leads to this Monaco goal. I fully blame him for this.
Yeah,
goal.
Absolutely. Because if you haven't seen it, like the way you just described it is accurate, but it can also be like misconstrued as like, oh yeah, he tries to play a through ball and somebody intercepts. Like, no, I mean, you are sitting, maybe 3 feet away from me, 4 feet away from me? That's how far away that player is. Like, he hits it straight into a Monaco player. Yeah. And then the rebound is collected by Bernardo Silva, who then drives at a Tottenham defense. And as we've heard time and time again about the Gegenpress, that one of the main features of it is you counter the counter. Because when the team has just regained possession and break, that's when they are then in a state of kind of complete chaos because players are very out of position. And if you counter the counter, you're going to catch them really in a state of vulnerability. And that's what they do quickly. That's why you have Jan Vertonghen kind of scrambling to try to defend. He stumbles and slips. Bernardo Silva cuts inside. Boom, goal.
Yeah, we got a good look at Vertonghen, right? He did have good defensive shape. He's showing Bernardo Silva outside, but then he stumbles. And I think the really clever thing that Silva does is as soon as Vertonghen stumbles, he cuts back the other way to take full advantage of it. It's really good work from him.
Yeah, and it's really good work from him, and congratulations to Monaco for selling him for like 60 or 70 million pounds in 2 years, because that's going to happen. Because he's also involved in the second goal. It's a series of throw-ins down the sideline. He then backheels, ball crossed in, eventual goal off of a volley.
If you are a Tottenham fan, I think this is the key sequence to watch. It's the 2 throw-ins before the... I'm sorry, who's the goal scorer?
It was Thomas Lemar. I'm sure it's Thomas Lemar or something. I apologize. Who came on in within 5 minutes, I think, because of injury.
And then scored?
Yep.
All right, so...
We scored 15 minutes later, but yeah.
Here's the key thing with this guy. Spurs do a bad job of defending a throw-in because no one knows who is marking who. It's really complicated. It's Kyle Walker, Eric Dyer, Christian Eriksen. There's 3 of them ready to defend this throw-in, just concentrating on this left wing where Monaco have the ball.
I'm going to go ahead and add in theoretically ready to defend this throw-in.
There's 1 thrower, 2 players. It should be 1 marks the thrower, always ready to mark the thrower, 2 others mark the 2 players. And essentially there's a miscommunication between what Eric Dyer is telling Kyle Walker to do and what Christian Eriksen is telling Kyle Walker to do. So first Walker does what Dyer says, then he does what Eriksen says, then there's a brief exchange, and then Walker, I think, kind of is just confused and tucks inside and leaves Eriksen 2-on-1.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, and you can see Eriksen's frustration because then he goes to mark Bernardo Silva, who receives the throw-in. Silva then backheels it back to the thrower.
Who's in just wide open
and then
space,
Eriksen turns and is like, okay, and then he runs forward, but he really does run forward to try to defend that cross with his arms out, sort of like, what? Why is no one helping me?
Yeah.
And before he can get there, that ball comes in.
And it leads to Monaco's second goal.
It does. And so you've got that confusion there where it's a lack of sharpness, a lack of awareness. Then you've got the fact that while all that's happening, Lemar, however you want to pronounce that one, is kind of hovering between Tottenham's midfielders. No one is really picking him up. I think Son is probably the one who should pick him up, but does not. And then he runs in essentially unmarked. Vertonghen doesn't see him coming. That's why he more or less loses that header, and then Lamar's there to volley it home.
I saw Lamar do this a couple of times. He would wait with the midfielders, and as the ball's coming in, he sprints to the defenders, so that he's arriving late as like an extra problem to try and fit into the equation of who you're marking.
Right. And so in the end, I wouldn't go so far as to say, like, the narrative, as I said, coming out of it seemed to be apathy and laziness.
There's no way there's apathy and laziness with it. That's never ever the actual problem, or very, very rarely the actual problem, especially with a team like Tottenham.
No, but I will say it did seem like if you wanted to go with maybe the overly simplistic explanation, I would go with the night the event got to them a little bit, because it did seem like the Spurs players were just sort of not as aware, as sharp as you definitely expect them to be, especially with that high tempo that they usually play.
I think it's unfamiliar surroundings, leads to confusion, leads to breakdowns, leads to uncertainty, leads to all these strange things that we just described happening.
And I have a theory about why all of that took place.
Why is that?
And I think it's because they saw the starting lineup and they saw that Radamel Falcao was starting for Monaco, and they all thought, like, wait, what? That guy? No, he's a Man United. No, he's a Chelsea player. I think he's still a Chelsea player. He must be a Chelsea player. Didn't he go back to Colombia?
He's always been a Monaco player, right?
All through that,
he was on loan. Yeah.
But it really, to the point where I just kind of forgot. Like, I knew he was a Monaco player. I knew he was on loan. I just assumed he'd been loaned out again. So to see him starting and playing and moving and looking pretty fluid, pretty good. Nice haircut, celebrating goals, wearing the captain's armband, I believe. He looked good, and Monaco, on the whole, looked very good. You understand why they're top of league.
So match day 1 of the Champions League in the books.
Yep.
We will, of course, be covering the Champions League as it unfolds throughout this season.
I suppose.
Today's show, Taylor, we have a sponsor.
We sure do.
The sponsor is our returning sponsor, FUCHI.
Yes, sir.
FUCHI Rebounders.
Yes, makers of the engineered rebounder. It's half soccer, half squash, is what I believe we've continuously called it. And I'm sticking with that.
So there are 3 videos, I think we've now posted on YouTube, of you and I playing FUCHI. We are getting ready to record a new FUCHI video. But we'd also had some questions from people about how you can use this rebounder to improve your technique.
Sure.
And we were talking earlier about Christian Pulisic being sort of this young player and he's got to fine-tune this and that. We're not suggesting Christian Pulisic should use a FUCHI rebounder, or maybe that could work. But I tasked you...
He may well have. We don't know.
As the licensed coach here at the table, I asked you earlier, could you come up with 3 drills that a young player or an aspiring adult could use a FUCHI rebounder, and the drills that they could do, use a FUCHI rebounder to improve their technique?
Sure. So the individual ones that I would say would be, we do them when we're doing our adult practices. We go with the Brazilians, is what I've always called them. But it's just as simple as getting the ball under control. So it's you volley into the net, then you're catching it with your right thigh, hitting it back with your left foot, or catching it with your chest and then volleying it back with your right foot.
So it's one control move, one return move.
Exactly. So
and then the net sends it back to you.
Right. And that might be a little bit advanced because it's kind of a continuous rhythm keeping the ball in the air. So the other one to do would be...
But that would be the point, right? Because otherwise you need someone who's willing to just constantly throw you the ball.
Oh, well...
And I can see how that would wear thin on someone's patience. So if you've got a rebounder willing to do it for you...
More on the one other person throwing the ball in a second.
Okay.
But I'm saying, like, maybe the Brazilians is like the ropes course, and the beginner level would just be keepy-ups, that you volley into the net and then you just try to get it back under control. Because the thing with the rebounder, it's engineered to kind of make the ball go in different directions at different times depending on the power and the position where it's hit. So then you have to move and adjust your body. So it's not just the like passing into a wall, ball comes back to you at the same angle, then you're trying to control it. It's you're having to move, you're having to be on your toes the whole time. So that can help with your touch as well. Those are 2. Okay. Then I think if you're a younger player, maybe you've got a parent with you, maybe you want to do some quality time. What I would say an easy one is basically you have the grid that comes with the FUCHI rebounder.
The court, right? That you have to land the ball in.
So you have the parent stand at the top of the court. The player faces the parent. Parent throws the ball over the player's head into the net. Player has to turn as soon as the parent lets go of the ball and like react to that ball coming at them. So they've got to learn to settle the ball and then get under control, turn and play it back to the parent.
Can you and I do this?
We could, yeah.
I feel like I could benefit from that.
I feel like we would very quickly become jerks to each other. Like very quickly, I would be hurling it at the net as hard as I could.
Well, maybe the next video we could do is to practice some of that stuff.
Right, because it works on reaction speed. We talked a little bit about what reactions and how quick your reflexes are off air. It'd be a good way to find out. Yeah.
Well, so I find this when I'm defending, it's very hard to sort of, if you're like facing multiple directions, and suddenly the ball comes in, and you want to get to it. Even now, I'm still tempted to just smack it clear and not look who's around me. I'd love to be able to get in the habit of settling it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So maybe we could have a practice at this.
Yeah.
Don't even have to film it. I just want to maybe practice it for myself.
I'd be fine with that. So those are my 3 tips.
Those are good. I think people should try those at home. I'm going to try at least one of those myself.
Are you going to make your wife come out with you and throw the ball?
Yeah.
You can practice it on your own?
I'm not sure she would enjoy that, but yes.
I love... Shannon's when she took over our Twitter account from one of our games that we were live broadcasting, she has the greatest tweet I think we've ever put out, which was, "Did you miss the first half? No worries, there's another one coming."
She's good at using the knowledge she has about soccer to convey information.
So yes, I agree that she probably wouldn't be so thrilled to go out there and throw a ball into a net.
If you would like to buy a FUTCHI Rebounder for yourself, you are in luck because the special, exclusive to Total Soccer Show, is still running. If you go to www.playfuchi.com, PLAYFUTCHI.com, use the coupon Total Soccer Bonus, all one word, all lowercase, you get $70 off the retail price. $70 off with Total Soccer Bonus.
That will work.
Thank you to FUCHI for sponsoring today's episode of the Total Soccer Show and for their continued support of TSS.
I agree with all the things you said.
Speaking of continued support, we have 1, 2, 3 scouting reports that have come in from the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network. I see 3 in front of me, Taylor.
Up first, we have Ian Schenk scouting Fernando Arce Jr., who moved to Dorados in the Mexican Second Division this summer. Arce Jr. has now gotten more playing time than he did with Tijuana last season. More on Tijuana later, coincidentally. Arce has played in 6 of Dorados' 10 games this season and scored in Saturday's 3-0 win over Juarez.
So, if I remember correctly, Fernando Arce Jr. is U.S. national team eligible, right?
Yes. Yeah, and has declared his intent to play for the U.S. national team.
And is the son of Fernando Arce?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. So this is definitely a player we should be keeping track of, and thank you to Ian Schenk for doing so.
Up next,
Ben Tondera is scouting Mason Holgate of Everton. Ben says, Seamus Coleman has been restored to the Everton lineup, meaning that Holgate got a bench-level ticket to watch the Romelu Lukaku show against Sunderland. Further bad news is that he didn't make the squad for England's most recent Euro Under-21 qualifier.
Yeah, but did have a good start to the season, so I'm sure he's still in the good graces with both club and country.
Yeah, put him in good stead with Koeman, I think.
Final report is regarding Zach Clough, comes to us from Carl Getz.
Zach Clough of Bolton?
Correct.
Yeah.
He is working his way back from injury and should return to Bolton soon. That's the update. But more importantly, from Carl, was that he was in Monterrey this week and happened to stay at the same hotel as Los Cholos de Tijuana, when they were in town for a game against Monterrey. Over the course of Monday and Tuesday, Carl ran into Paul Arriola and Greg Garza, as well as Miguel Herrera, El Piojo.
Right.
Yeah, and sent us some photos. They were the one of him and Herrera is especially hilarious. But Carl, we need anecdotes. I need stories. I need to know, what was Miguel Herrera ordering? What was he eating? Did he order room service? Was he at the buffet? What was he watching in the lounge? These are the things I need to know.
Me too. Paul Arriola also in the TSS Scouting Network.
Yeah, he is. He is indeed. Doesn't it seem like Miguel Herrera should just constantly be wearing like warm-up suits? Like he should he should always be wearing some sort of leisure wear. I don't think he should ever be in a suit.
Thank you to Ian, Ben and Carl for sending in those scouting reports. The scouting reports keep coming. We love receiving them. We love keeping track of all the great young players around the globe, especially the young American talent. If you would like to be part of the Total Soccer Show Scouting Network, if you would like to support TSS, go to totalsoccershow.com/subscribe and all the information is right there.
Yes, sir.
Taylor, we are coming towards the end of another Total Soccer Show, but we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to preview that Toronto FC New York Red Bulls game, part of our new MLS coverage, and we're going to answer some listener questions. I'm telling you like you don't know, we planned this earlier.
I had already forgotten, so I appreciate that. Yeah.
Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy, and thanks for listening to my Bravo TV references. I do appreciate it.
Listeners, thank you for listening to Taylor's Bravo TV references. We'll talk to you again on Friday.